Welcome to History Adventuring. This is episode number 352. I'm Brad Hall, and today we're looking at how ordinary people talked in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. Since I love to time travel, I often wonder what ordinary people talked like. That is, what slang terms did they use? What words would have caused me to get a punch in the nose? What words would have made absolutely no sense to people back in the day? Today I'm going to time travel back to the 1970s, 80s, and 90s and explore how ordinary people talked. The 1990s. It really doesn't feel that long ago to me, but times have changed. You certainly wouldn't have heard people saying they were going to Google something. And while the software Photoshop existed, there would have been no understanding of photoshopping something, unless you were talking to a graphic designer like me. And in 1999, I bought a car that had a name that would cause people to laugh nowadays. It was called a Cougar. Nowadays, a Cougar is a slang term used for a woman who dates younger men. But back in the 90s, it was just a car, or a big cat. The 1980s. I remember this era well. If you were able to magically transport yourself back to the 1980s, you wouldn't really need a translation machine. You'd understand the people very well, with only a few things sounding kinda strange. What I recall most vividly was being called a homeboy in 1987. That meant someone who fit into a neighborhood, who belonged. If you traveled back to 1987, though, it wouldn't have been a term that most people used. I'd never heard of it. And certainly there would be no homie or homies. I lived in California during the 1980s, so I heard a lot of Valley Girl speak and Surfer Dude talk, which I understand spread out all over the country, like totally dude, gnarly, tubular. The 1970s. I was alive then, so I can speak from experience, but my memory is kinda hazy. And this is where the exaggeration really sets in from people who have nothing else to go on except maybe old Cheech and Chong movies, or TV shows that were created to have fun with how people talked and dressed in the 1970s. And yes, it was different. The biggest change that I can remember is the sudden dropping of using certain words, which had not only dropped out of fashion, but had become offensive. I won't mention them here, but it was a time when the word black replaced all the other words for African Americans. The older people would still be using older terms, which made the young people cringe, such as gal. And the word girl went out of favor as the women's right movement gained momentum. A girl was a term only used for a female under about the age of 13. Anyone older than that was a woman. I saw a paperback book where every instance of the word girl was carefully crossed out by someone who wrote woman. People felt very strongly about this. And everyone called everyone man in conversation, like, "Hey man, how you doing, man?" I distinctly remember a person of the female gender in the 1970s taking offense to being addressed this way, saying, "I'm not a man." I'm pretty sure she got a, "Sorry man." Thank you for time traveling with me, guys. Which, by the way, now includes both males and females, which it didn't before Rita Moreno shouted, "Hey you guys," in the 1970s on The Electric Company. This has been History Adventuring. I'll talk to you later.